In this video we're going to learn how to talk about our family in Spanish. So first of all we are going to meet the full conjugation of a reflexive verb, the verb llamarse, to be called. We'll also meet the words for some family members, el padre, la madre, etc. We'll look again at the words for my, your and his, her, and discover their plural forms so that we can talk about my parents, mis padres. And then we'll go on to look at the way of making a verb negative in Spanish. And finally we'll look at how we say I have a brother called, which in Spanish needs us to say a brother who is called. So here is the singular of the verb llamarse. We can see the infinitive of the verb to be called at the top here, which is the verb llamar, with the reflexive pronoun se on the end of the infinitive. So literally we've got to call oneself, llamarse, to be called. Of course we've already met how to say in Spanish my name is, where Spanish literally says I call myself, and that is the phrase me llamo, which as I said before is literally I call myself. We can see this is just a regular AR verb like hablar, because the tu form ending is hablas and the el, ella form ending is llamas and llama. So we get I call myself, me llamo. You call yourself, te llamas, both of which we've met before in the question, ¿Cómo te llamas? What is your name? And the answer, me llamo Pablo, my name is Paul. Here now is the third person singular, he, she is called, se llama, which is literally he or she calls him or herself. Here are the three plural forms then of the verb llamarse. The nosotros form, we call ourselves, we are called. Nos, ourselves, llamamos, we call. The you plural form, os llamáis, you all call yourselves. And the they form, the third person plural, they call, llaman, themselves, se llaman, they are called. In practice we don't say use these two very much, we are called, you are called, but you will certainly need to know this one if you wanted to talk about other members of your family. Notice that there is no difference in Spanish between the words for himself and herself and themselves. In the singular and the plural it's both se. Next we have the vocabulary for some common family members. You can see there that this vocabulary can be studied in a little bit more detail on the website Quizlet, to which there is a link there, although the link won't work directly from the video obviously. I'll just run through the pronunciation of some of these words for you. They're all there with the words for the in the singular before them, the definite article el in the masculine or la in the feminine. So we have el padre, father, el hermano, brother, el abuelo, grandfather, el tío, el primo, el padrastro, and el hermanastro. And then the feminine forms, la madre, la hermana, la abuela, la tía, la prima, la madrastra, and la hermanastra. The next thing we need to learn is to recap the words for my and also your and his or her. But on this slide we'll discover the plural words for my. That's to say, the word for my that you use when you are talking about my brothers or my sisters, as opposed to just my brother or my sister. So we'll remember that we have learnt before the word for my, which is just mi, your, tu. We learnt that in the context of mi cumpleaños, my birthday, or the question, ¿cuándo es tu cumpleaños? When is your birthday? His birthday is su cumpleaños es. So we know now that a sentence like my brother is called Paul is translated into Spanish by mi, my hermano, brother, calls himself Paul. Mi hermano se llama Pablo. The feminine form of mi is exactly the same as the masculine. So this is different from French, if that's a language you learned before. Mi hermano, my brother, and mi hermana, my sister. The ending of the noun changes to indicate gender, but the word for my is exactly the same. However, when we go into the plural, Spanish does change the word for my, as we can see here. Mis. It's the same for both genders, but it's added an S on. And crucially, that S is always pronounced in Spanish. Again, unlike in French, if that's a language that you've learnt, where the S on the end of me is often not pronounced. So we get the Spanish for my brothers are called Paul and Joseph, where we can see that there are three bolded and underlined elements of the sentence that must be made plural. Mis hermanos se llaman Pablo y José. We remember, however, that the word for themselves, they call themselves, is the same as it is in the singular for herself or himself. When we get into the feminine form, again we see we're having to make three different elements of the sentence plural. Mis, remember it's the same as for the masculine. Hermanas, a feminine ending for the noun. When we get into the verb, of course, the ending simply indicates that it's they. It tells us that it's plural, not he or she. But verb endings don't tell us anything about gender, just number. So that se llaman is plural they, whether we're talking about male or female. Mis hermanas se llaman Ana y Juanita. A simple negative in Spanish is very, very straightforward. We just need to put the word no before the verb. So if I want to say, I do not live in Berlin, I simply say, no vivo en Berlín. I am not from Germany. No soy de Alemania. I don't speak German. No hablo alemán. Remember, it's going immediately before the verb. So if I want to say, my mother is not German, here's the verb, she is, and I need to put the word no immediately before that. Mi madre no es alemana. We need to be very careful as English speakers, because in English these two words are the other way round. Is, not. But in Spanish the rule is that we put the word no before the verb. No es. Similarly, if I want to say my grandparents are not German, mis abuelos no son alemanes, I found the verb son. Mis abuelos son alemanes would mean my grandparents are German, and I put the word no immediately before the verb. Mis abuelos no son alemanes. I've left the first sentence until the last. No me llamo Klaus. My name is not Klaus. Simply because I want you to notice that with a reflexive verb, I call myself, me llamo, the not comes before the reflexive pronoun. So I wonder if you can think how you would say in Spanish, he is not called Klaus. I'll give you a second to think about that. I hope you've come up with the answer. No se llama Klaus. So here we just have a few more examples of this to try and make it clear. Sorry about the formatting at the top of this slide, which has hidden part of these two words here. It should of course say, to form the negative, put no before the verb, as we've just discussed. So we have the Spanish for I am English, soy inglés, and I am not English, no soy inglés. I have brothers, tengo hermanos. I don't have any brothers, no tengo hermanos. My brother is called Paul, mi hermano se llama Pablo. My brother is not called Paul, mi hermano no se llama Pablo. Tiene 12 años, he's 12. He's not 12, no tiene 12 años. We live in a house in London, vivimos en una casa en Londres, and no vivimos en una casa en Londres. We do not live in a house in London. The final slide in this presentation deals with a very common error that English speakers make when they are talking about family, and that is when you want to say, I have a brother called John. I have cousins, 2 cousins called John and Bill. We could express that in English as, I have a brother who is called John. But we tend to miss the who is out in English. In Spanish, this is absolutely impossible. If we ever want to say that we have a relation called something or other, we've got to say who que before we say is called, se llama. So if we want to say, I have a brother called John, it must be, tengo un hermano que se llama Juan. Tengo un hermano que se llama Juan. My father has a sister who is called Jane. Mi padre tiene una hermana que se llama Juanita. Or we have 2 cousins who are called Paul and John. Tenemos 2 primos que se llaman Pablo y Juan. Notice that if I am talking about more than one person, dos primos, the que stays the same, singular and plural. So does the se, as we've already seen. He calls himself, she calls herself, they call themselves, himself, herself, themselves, all the same form. But the verb must change. They call themselves. We need to use the 3rd person plural ending instead of she or he calls him or herself.